Hello and welcome back to the Marketing Brief Podcast. I am your host, Brian Aquan, and this is the podcast where we talk about any and all aspects across the marketing landscape. Of course, to do that, we always need a guest. And today we doubled up and we brought in two guests. So we're really excited to invite both Brett Whalen and we just call him Yo and Yo into the podcast. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Brian? Thanks for
Good,
having
good. Good to be here,
I'm
Brian.
excited to have you guys here. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves? I know you are the founders of Forma AI, but how would you like to introduce yourselves to the listeners?
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Yo and I are both sort of veterans of the media and advertising world, combined 50 plus years on sort of opposite sides of the desk. So, I spent 25 years working media agencies, holding companies, IPG, when it still existed, Canvas, Publicis, running investment and strategy across a variety of accounts. And around that same time, Yo was working in media sales. So starting in traditional Turner Broadcasting back in New York, like I always like to say, finally came to his senses, moved to LA, and also pivoted into digital, programmatic, out of home, you name it, across companies like Microsoft, Warner Brothers, Samba TV, MIQ, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we've worked together for, probably 15 plus years, him trying to sell me things, me politely saying no. And, uh,
He
and
was
then,
very polite. He's
yeah,
polite
we,
reject.
we do like to say, a little bit of our superhero origin story was, a little bit of serendipity or sort of like, right place, right time when Yo came to call on me one day back in Publicis days, I think when I was running the
Yeah.
Hulu business.
What, like you said, a superhero origin story, or is it supervillain origin story? To be decided.
We'll see by the end of the film.
We'll
Yeah.
see, yeah. I was actually just there to have a regular meeting with Brett, and I mentioned his name, and I mentioned the Hulu, that was the business he was working on. And a woman who was having office hours, and I guess Publicis set this thing up from a company called OpenAI. This is like 2023. And she overheard I was here to see someone on Hulu, and she started a conversation with me about why she was there, and she was there to recruit people from the ground on up to work on this new tool they're about to release from a company called OpenAI called ChatGPT.
Mhm.
And she gave me her 90-second elevator pitch, and then Brett finally got me for the meeting. And obviously, as we know what AI is now, it blew me away what she told me. So I told Brett about it, and we just kept talking about I heard from this woman. Instead of having our meeting, we had a sliding doors moment where we were like,
Yeah.
let's shelve this meeting and let's go back and talk to this woman. And she invited us to a training program to get trained, become a prompt engineer, to see how this tool will be used.
Yeah.
But that wasn't our awakening moment. It took us another like 6 months because, well, for one, I went very into it, meaning I put my head in the sand like an ostrich and didn't pull my head up, thinking everyone was doing this now. And then it was Brett that was like, I think there's something here.
Yeah. And also I had to actually convince Yo that the whole world, and again, this is 2023, and I think at most people had sort of dabbled in it, but in his head, like everyone was using it as much as he was, like every day in every way. And I had to we went to an event, we went to like an industry event, and there were probably, 100 people there. And I said, let's try this. We're going to walk around the room. And I want you to ask people like if they've been using AI at all. And when they do, ask them, if they say yes, ask them what they've been doing with it. And if anyone says anything besides helping me write an email or make my email sound less harsh, I want you to count up how many people that is. And so probably an hour later, we kind of reconvened and he's like, you're right. I had no idea. I just assumed. And I'm like, no, like people have not figured out what this can do for them yet. And so, that was kind of this gap that we saw was as much as, and it's gotten even worse in the last, 12, 18 months, as much as it was like everyone was talking about it, people actually using it or putting it into practice in their day to day was still pretty rare. Like there's still, and there are stats nowadays still about like the really small percentage that is really, really using it. And the vast majority of people are still, maybe they've heard about it, maybe they played about it, maybe they're starting to scratch the surface. And we've seen this over the last 2 years,
Mhm.
we used to start a workshop and ask people, who's ever used AI, and you'd get like 3 hands out of 25. And now it's pretty much everybody, but the depths, I think, is what is still a huge opportunity, is sort of showing people not just what it can do, but also what it can do for you in what you have to get done every day. So like I said, we like to try and, that Venn diagram, what we lean on is sort of our superpower, if you're seeing a theme here, origin story superpowers, is not just, it's sort of like that AI knowledge, right? And then it's sort of like the domain expertise. So like we have domain expertise in media, advertising, sales, and that's still crucially important to how anyone uses AI, is like having a base of knowledge, because otherwise the AI can seem like it knows a lot, but it can also steer you in a lot of bad directions. So having, your common sense, experience, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it, and coupling that with the power of AI is, that's where we see the big unlock. And that's sort of the gap that we have been filling for media organizations, agencies, advertisers, things like that, of sort of bringing all that and supercharging it with AI.
Yeah. So, and those were early adopters in 2023 who are still using it to write an email. Of course, there's still a large percentage of people who are still treating it that way. I guess what kind of prompted you guys to start a training program? Is that how you kind of define Forma AI?
Yeah, so during that period of time where I had this awakening and Brett and I were starting to think about how we could structure this, a lot of the people that we were speaking to were always saying to us, "Well, can you teach me how to do that?" And I would say at least once a day in our conversations where we were having with people, I'll tell you a good example. We also do, media consulting because, as Brett mentioned in the open, he brings the buy side of the media ecosystem and I bring the sell side. So we have like this nice little unique offering. And when we would send in proposals or send in materials to like work with people, a lot of them said to us, "How'd you do this?" Or "And how did you do this? Or who'd you hire to do this?" And again, it was one of those where I had my, "You don't know we're using AI." Like, I was like, "How do you not know that AI is our third partner?" And that's where Brett would be like, "You see what I'm talking about? You see?" And those conversations would be like, I remember we had a conversation with a guy at, a very big ad tech company, and I remember him saying to us after we showed him, he's like, "I wish you could come in and teach my marketing team how to do this." And when I shared that one comment with Brett, Brett's like, "I think we should."
Yeah, I mean, we like to say we didn't necessarily go into this 100% thinking this would be the focus of the business, but it's kind of one of those things we said, well, the marketplace told us what it needed. You know what I mean? Like there was this huge gap. There are people out there training people how to use AI, whether it's online or even sometimes in person, but it tends to be, sort of generic. It's like it's kind of for everyone, and that's perfectly good and that's useful. But like the ability to come in and not just teach you how to use AI, but teach you how to use it in the language that you speak about, whether it's about RFPs or about brand briefs or about, audience segmentations, like being able to really make it real. That was where we kind of saw, like, and again, like I said, the marketplace sort of told us all these people out there who were AI curious, maybe a little AI intimidated, but also knew that they should be using it, or companies were just starting at that point. And again, this is, early 2023, just starting to roll out like, oh, hey, we've signed up with Copilot, Microsoft, is throwing this in for everyone. So start using it. And, most people, again, they had no idea where to start and they really had no idea what to do with it. So for the most part, they either ignored it or they just, like you said, make my email sound nicer. So it was a combination of observations we had in talking to people, but then also, like I said, the marketplace kind of like, waving a red flag of like, look, this is something that people need and it's not available to them.
Right. Yeah. And I was able to take your course a couple of weeks ago, which I really enjoyed. I've been using AI. I've been probably a heavy user for a year. I came into that course, which you guys bill as a 101, but there's a lot of things that I took away from that immediately that I hadn't been doing, right? Like
Yeah.
setting up my profile, how to, things in like, I always think of how to train your dragon, how to train your AI. But it like there are really like fundamental things you can do at the outset, which makes your experience a lot better and you start to compound and learn a lot more quickly. And I'm sure a lot of people have that experience, right? Coming out of your first class.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because people who say that they're using AI and then they take our course are like, "Oh, I haven't been using AI. Like I thought I'd been using it, but I haven't even scratched the surface." There's a guy that we love to mention because he's a really good academic. His name is Ethan Malik, and he says that if AI stopped right now, it would take us 10 years to catch up to for its capability, and it's not stopping now. So when people realize of all the possibilities that it could do and how much it touches, that is the awakening. We had, or even early on in our course, 2.5 years ago, we had someone like you who considered a power user, and I think like he tells us all the time because I can't believe how much I didn't know. It's what you don't know, is what people are always like going, I can't believe what's coming. And
I
what's
think people also tend to get into habits. They use AI every day, right? But they use it for like three things. They use it to write emails. They maybe use it to do some research. Maybe they create some images. Like there's some things they do, and it's great at all those things. But I think sometimes you get a little locked in blinders to all the other ways you can use it. So I think that's a lot of what we teach is not just specific use cases, but also just keeping that open mind. Like one of the things we tell people, we have sort of our AI commandments, of how to use AI. And one of them is before you start any task, think about like, could AI help me do this? And give it a chance. And even if the answer you think is no, you'll be surprised how often it is, like and in ways that are maybe unexpected. So that's a really core thing and we've touched on this earlier, is like learning to use AI is partially just learning some skills, some things to do, some actual approaches. But a big part of it is really just about a mindset. It's really about adjusting your perspective and how you think about these tools, in a way that is very different than I think any other technology that has come across in any of our lifetimes. So that's a fundamental, again, back to, Ethan Malik, who had this, I think he calls it like a 10-hour rule. It's like, you need to spend a good 10 hours, like actually working with an LLM, working with Chat or Claude or Gemini or whatever, and doing things and trying things before it like really kind of clicks, where all of a sudden you're like, okay, I get it now. This is how I work with it. And that, that's by no means the end of it, but it sort of like sets you off and gets you, I think, with a better perspective to be able to unlock potential.
For
a
sure.
lot of
And
people. Oh, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, one of the knocks was everybody using Chat GPT, using their LLM as they were using search, right? But that was something we knew, right? It's like I ask questions, I get information. Okay, this is just a learned behavior that I can adapt to that. So it doesn't surprise me that that was initially how people use, and of course, we want to see them evolve from that. But you brought up that point, about it not stopping, right? AI is continuing, and I'd love to ask you guys, you're teaching a course that's not on a static subject, right? It's a moving target that's changing all the time. What kind of challenge does that bring to you guys?
It's awesome because then no, and I say this as someone that has presented my whole life for 30 years. I always tell Brett, I always feel like we're getting stale with what we're doing because it sounds so repetitive. And it's only repetitive to us because we do it, 4 times a week or whatever. But what is even better is that the people that have taken our course 2.5 years ago have come back because it's evolved so much. They realize that, what you could have done. I'll give you a great example of the image that you see right over my shoulder. Okay. When we first started doing this, that image would not have Forma on it. Okay. AI in image generation couldn't do numbers and letters at all. It was awful. Right. And he couldn't have Forma written up in clouds in the sky on his. And now you could do it like that. Within 7 seconds, you can have an image with a full thing on it. And now that multiply that with every use case that AI can do with writing, coding, automation, workflows. It's just become so much more fluid. They're all starting to connect with each other. And when that connection comes with more about fluency and like, how do you connect everything? How do you use it in a workflow? So even though I love that it's changing so much because it keeps it fresh. Like it
Mhm.
really does keep it. Like I guarantee you, Brian, you took it a couple of months ago. If you come back in 6 months, it will be a new course because and I don't want to keep going on. It also is a reflection of how much integration AI has become organically in our society. We had to elevate the floor
Yeah.
because, at the beginning, it was all about prompting. And now people are understanding that prompting is part of the language that you need to speak to it. So we have to like raise the floor a little bit, start a little higher than we used to, because people are
Mhm.
starting to understand it a
Yeah,
little.
yeah. I mean, like it's twofold though. On the one hand, like stuff's changing constantly. Like, I mean, that's half our day is just trying to keep up with the changes and understanding, what they mean and how they might apply to what we're teaching or how the people that we're working with might be able to use them. But there is still sort of this core fundamental set of, like you said, skills, perspectives, mindsets that do carry on, that are still sort of universal, even as these things are changing. So, and those adapt a little bit, but so, to the same point, someone who took our course 2.5 years ago, if they took the same one now, there are parts that they'd be like, yeah, I remember this. Like, and it's basic stuff. It's like when we tell
Yeah.
people, you mentioned the
All the
Google search,
jokes.
like we always say, like one of the worst UX choices ever made was making that chat GPT, box look like a Google search because your brain is trained on how to talk to that box, right? And so you start putting in bits of words and little things like the things that help you get good search results, right? That we've all learned over the past 25 years. But the reality is that's exactly the wrong way, or certainly not the optimal way to talk to an AI, which we always say, talk to it like a human. And that's, the sort of thing, an axiom that has been there since the beginning. We continue to tell people. And sometimes even just like a little unlock like that, I think for people is really important. So it's constantly changing, but there are still some truisms that I think are going to hold for a long time. So
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I took away from the course was you guys helping people understand what AI's purpose is, right? And that it is engineered to help you, to make you feel smart, to give you the information you want, but ultimately to make you happy. And
Yes.
that if you want to get the most out of it, you've got to figure out how to have it challenge you in different stages. And that's really part of like the training, and that was something I took away. Is that something you guys continue to make a
Yeah.
point of? Yeah,
It's one of my favorite parts of of our course is that realization that you're like, "Oh, I now know why AI is telling me this." And it's basically user bias. And user bias is AI is an algorithm that looks at every character of every sentence. And when I say character, I literally mean every character. And it picks up on cues of what the user wants. It's just going to, like Brett likes to say, it took a page out of the social media playbook, which is to keep people engaged by giving the user what it wants, which causes hallucinations, which causes, things that will cause AI work slop, which is causing big problems now in corporate world. And that unlock, when you realize you're like, oh, this is a self-affirming machine. This isn't really, I always like to tell people, it's my favorite, one of my favorite things is like, Brian, what's artificial turf? What and people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, what's artificial turf? It's fake grass. And then what's artificial intelligence? It's fake
fake intelligence.
intelligence. It's not real. Like what you're looking at is not real. Like everything it spits out is just an algorithm. Again, back to our theme being a superhero. It's become a superhero algorithm that gives you an output based off of percentages, right? And it's going to pick up what it wants you to know and what you want. So that is one of my favorite parts of the of that course is that flipping of understanding like, oh, it's not really intelligence. It's telling me that I'm the best because that's what I would needs to hear. So that's my favorite. It's one of my favorite moments of the course, actually.
yeah, and that's like a really important theme we talk about. It's not just how to use it, but how to use it carefully, thoughtfully. Like AI can get you into a lot of trouble if you just go with it, if you just let it run wild. And so a little bit of understanding why it does that, like Yo was saying, in terms of like it really is just an algorithm. It's not actually intelligent. And it's also programmed to keep you engaged and keep you there and keep you liking it. But that ability to be critical, to be skeptical, to understand some of its leanings is really important to get good work out of it and to use it well and to be productive with it. We've all heard all the fail stories, so we think it's really important to try and arm people with some tools to not be a new fail story.
One of the things that we talk about hallucinations, OpenAI just released ChatGPT 5.5, I believe, or 5.6. And if you look at their release and all the benchmarks, there's one thing that all these models never release, and it's the hallucination rates. If you ever look at the benchmarks, the hallucination rates are always never really shown. And it's because it's not really been a huge degradation of hallucinations over the last 3 years. We're talking
Right.
about percentage points. You would think that hallucinations would go down as models would get more and more sophisticated. They are going down, but not at any exponential rate. It's very,
Yeah.
very minimal. So when people realize that, and that's the thing, people don't even realize that you have a 25 to 30% hallucination rate on a daily basis. Yeah. And again, I don't want to scare everybody. Hallucination means uh, one thing being wrong in the sentence. It doesn't mean the whole concept being wrong, but just
Right.
that little thing. But humans don't pick up on these little hallucination errors that happen on a constant basis.
Well, which is why it's so important to bring your domain experience,
Yep,
which you guys talk
exactly.
about, and I think is so powerful. It's like it's not going to turn me into a scientist all of a sudden, but
No,
I know marketing, and I'm going to be smarter about talking about marketing because I can bring that domain experience into the experience.
Yeah, and that's
absolutely.
that's and that's one of the key things about So say we used to have a tagline of AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows AI will. And then we had
Right.
someone who's like, well, AI took my brother's job. And we're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Oftentimes I think it's more like a CFO excuse, but that is getting messaged out there. So we definitely took that tagline off. But this is why we're not so pessimistic about AI in the job market. And that's not to say AI is not now and not going to continue to have significant effects on the job market. But it will, as people start to realize that that domain expertise is still a crucial part of the equation. So you can't get rid of that completely. And going back to that original tagline, like being the person that knows something and also knows how to use AI is your best insurance for
Sure.
future employment and career success. So that's definitely, I think, a big theme. And everyone's coming in right now. I think it's top of mind for everybody what the impact of AI is going to be on jobs writ large, but also on a personal basis. Like, how do I safeguard myself? And so that's why education, learning how to use these tools, being the person that can be more productive, more effective, more knowledgeable, because you're coupling that experience, that common sense with the power of AI is, I think, a really important step for people to be taking right now.
One thing that we were a little tone deaf on, and it was one of those things when you're running a business, sometimes it's not obvious because it's standing right in front of you. But I would say when we do our workshops, Brian, I would say maybe 25% sometimes are in the room are in transition between roles and stuff. And
Yeah.
saying AI is not going to take your job, but people who know AI will. People are sitting in there going, my HR told me the reason why I got was redundancy of AI. Now I feel like shit that you just told me that. It was a little tone deaf for us to say that, but it was also we've seen an uptick of people taking our course that are in transition situations.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
almost like we shouldn't be.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's smart. They're like, hey, I'm in between things right now. What can I do to, improve my prospects of the next job, or what skills can I be acquiring while I have some time? And I think it's at the top of almost everyone's list.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I always ask my guests a question, and you guys started this superhero narrative when we started. But the question for this season is, what is your superpower? Yo, do you know what your superpower is?
I'm gonna steal. I don't know what my superpower is, but I could say the superpower of Forma is something that Brett said in an interview about a year ago. And I think this is why Brett and I are work well together. And I don't know if this is superhero, but it's kind of superhero. Lift Brett off the ground in aspiration, and Brett keeps my feet to the ground being pragmatic. So having that push pull of us of always having going, but going with pragmatism is always like I don't know if that's our superpower, but that is one of the recipes that really makes Brett and I work well as a forma.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always say like I don't know that I could have done this on my own, and I think you says
Hmm.
the same thing. So it's founding something from trying to mold it from a lump of clay is challenging. So having someone to do it with is really helpful. And to Yo's point, like having people was sort of like very kind of complimentary. Again, I had this agency client side experience. He had this sales media company experience. He's very thinks big picture. Just go do stuff. And I'm very like, well, wait a minute, let's think about this and consider the implications. And either of those on their own are really dangerous. But I think
Hmm.
having that dynamism there has been really important to what we've been able to accomplish. So
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think
Well, I
there's
got to
it's more like a Wonder Twin superpower.
Yeah.
special sauce.
Yeah.
I got to experience it firsthand, and it was a joy to watch you guys kind of do your thing and play off of each other. And it's a long-standing thing that people in advertising understand the buyer and the seller relationship and how they get along. So you guys play off that very, very well. I enjoyed
We
it.
like to say it's a workshop and it's also a little bit of a vaudeville show. So we get
It is. It is. We do have like these jokes that we insert and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me for this brief conversation on the Marketing Brief podcast. It's been a joy to have you both.
Thanks, Brian, for having us, and always love talking to you.
yeah, thanks, and talk again soon.
Yeah. And as I tell the listeners, stay curious.
Take care.